The condition is really crazy condition.
And that shouldn't give away the whole secret to professional windsurfing.
Matteo Aquino giving Antoine Elbow a run for his money. Here we go. Woo! What a finish.
The guy is kind of talking bullshit.
The team's just got to work a little harder. Welcome to the Windsurfing Podcast, back again for episode 15. And this week, we literally have the king of windsurfing. He talks about wooden booms. He talks about windows in sails, swept back daggerboards, and the massive invention that was the foot strap, and how it all happened in Kailua, where he lived. We talk about riders, team riders, because obviously he went on to form his own brand, and how he didn't want to give them custom boards. We talk about Burnt Rodiger, and how he says his head was up his arse. Yes, we talk about investments, and we talk about how he is not actually a very good businessman. There is lots in this podcast. It's been much anticipated and probably the most requested. It is, of course, the one and only king of windsurfing, Robby Naish.
The king is in the house. He's actually in his own house in Maui, and we're doing this through Zoom for obvious reasons. But thank you, Robby, for finding the time for a little chat.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
Yeah.
It took a while to coordinate.
Yeah, no worries. Can I address you, Your Highness, for the length of this podcast?
Just call me Robby.
Okay. So obviously you're in Maui, and this is a little bit of a special year. I guess normally summer or a lot of the year would be your travel time. How is it to just be stuck there? I mean, it is paradise, but I think for the last 45 years you've been on the road pretty much. How's that?
Yeah, these have been really interesting times. I told people this is the longest I've been home in one stretch since I graduated from high school. And it's, all things considered, I think Maui is probably the best place in the world to be stuck. We have almost no COVID. We've been pretty much free the entire time, even through the worst times. We could go to the beach every day, so I've been riding a ton. It's just a little strange not to be getting on an airplane after so many years of traveling pretty much nonstop. And, even in the winter, I'm constantly coming and going somewhere. So it's been different. It's been, I guess, different for everybody though. So
yeah,
that's how it is.
Does it mean a lot more water time if you're there, or just a lot more office time?
Well, it's certainly more water time, because when I travel, you tend to not get in the water that much. Even if you're traveling, like in the old days, traveling to World Cups, for example, you'd go somewhere, you'd spend 10 days there, sometimes 2 weeks. But if you count the amount of time that you really spent on the water, even if you won, like if you won every heat you did, you don't actually spend that much time in the water. You spend a lot of time driving and getting to the beach and rigging, and you go out for a 15 or 20 minute warm up, and then you got to come off the water. You wait for your heat, you do your 12 minutes, and then you wait 6 hours to your next 12 minutes if you win. And so the time now is, I would say, way more time on the water than usual, because I'm getting in the water basically every day. Like yesterday, I took a day off just because I was so sore. We ended up just saying, oh, fuck it, let's do yard work or something instead, because pretty much every day I've been getting on the water. So it's been really good for development, for testing, for just, riding and staying in shape, because it's been constant. And fortunately, we've had really good conditions. It's been crazy windy.
Next year you might get a lot more windsurf tourists to Maui, because everybody's like, Maui's flat in the summer, and then you have all you guys just posting stuff every day. There's, shoulder high or waist high waves, and it's just super windy and looks really fun.
Yeah, it's been crazy windy, and honestly, we've had pretty good swell. We didn't have a lot of south swell this summer. We had an early, really good south swell. The beginning was really spring, but no real good south swell all summer. And then we've had quite a bit of north swell, wind bump, just enough to get out. Really good for windsurfing. It hasn't been that great for windsurfing like wave sailing, but it's been really good for slalom and just blasting around.
Yeah. So you say you're still on the water pretty much every day at 56. Sorry to bring that.
57.
57.
Yeah, 57.
57. There you go.
I was born in April 1963. So getting old.
Yeah, but still every day on the water. And you've touched on that, and I actually really want to know personally as well. You've touched on that in, like, I've seen the teaser of your new movie that came out last year, and you said, like, I've been searching for a goal, kind of. And I wonder, like, you go out on the water every single day, and how many of those sessions are kind of for yourself, for fun? Obviously, you're always sort of having fun one way or the other, but like, I know from experience, I've been doing this maybe 6 years. You've been doing 46. and like, I rarely go to the water without a specific goal, whether it be the gear testing, preparing for a contest, whatever certain thing you're doing. So do you ever just go out sailing or kiting or supping or winging or whatever?
I actually go way more often probably than I should, just for fun. I think that's probably the only reason I'm still doing it and still so passionate about it. If it was work, or I had something, that I had to accomplish or test every time I went out, I probably would have stopped doing it. Or I'd be doing it a lot less, and I'd be working a lot more.
But it's funny. It's funny you say that, because a lot of, like, of course, everybody has that passion, and, like, I think all the best windsurfers, they love to go windsurf, or surfers, whatever, But I think, if anything, for a lot of the guys, it brings more passion if you have that goal to go, because you just...
I mean, it never gets boring, right? It's not like you're just taking your same old board and your same old sail. It's constantly evolving and changing, and there is always something that has to be tested or developed. But I don't really look at it that way, because then it starts to feel like work. And to me, it's never been work. Work is sitting behind a computer. Work is stressing about numbers, dealing with employees, the business side of the sport. So when I'm on the water, like, even if I am testing things, going in and out, like the other day I was testing wings and different fuselages, foiling on the wingsurfer. It was, it still didn't feel like work. I really enjoy that aspect of it. I'm not a tinkery guy. You're not going to see me looking at my GPS and coming in and out. And, like, when I go ride, even if I'm testing, it's very organic. It's all about feel. Yeah, I think I'm going faster. I'm not super scientific about it. I'm playing. I have fun on the water, whether it's paddling around on a sup, or winging, or windsurfing, or kiting, or testing boards that I've made. It's still fun, and that's the core of it. And even that kind of work is fun. I don't really look at that as work. And in that respect, I think, we're really lucky to do what we do for a living. That's why I've been doing it so long and trying to keep it going. I realize how lucky I am to get paid to do this. So yeah. I'd be doing it anyway. So
Yeah. How many of the guys that competed against in your 20s or even grew up windsurfing or whatever are still there around, and you still see them enjoying it as much as you do, even if they're not professionally involved?
there's quite a few that are still around. Not a lot of them are windsurfing. Some are, but they kite. A lot of them have gotten into wing foiling here lately. A lot of the older guys. That's kind of brought this whole resurgence of getting old guys back on the water. But quite a few. There's Alex Aguirre, for example. I've known him since the windsurfer days, and he's still out there almost every day now, winging, foiling, testing stuff. But I still run into some of the older guys. Matt Schweitzer still gets out there and windsurfs a lot, and some of the guys from that era, which is really cool. Ken Winter, who was a windsurfer. He was at the first Windsurfer North American Championships that I went to in 1976 in Berkeley, California. And he still gets out there. He's not windsurfing, but he's, kiting and developing stuff and windsurfing. And this isn't the kind of sport that people disappear from. I think if they have the means and their body allows them, at one level or another, they keep doing it for a really long time. So you don't see a lot of retired windsurfers. You see people that, haven't done it for a long time, but in their heart, they wish they were still. And if they have the ability, they're still getting out there, even if it's on their old gear.
Yeah, I think the ones that go away, they come back even kind of stronger. You move to a city and start an office job and make all the money, and you're still like, shit, something's missing. So
yeah, I meet a lot of people traveling around the world that the 70s and 80s were the best time of their life. Windsurfing was like their free time. And then they grew up, they got a job, they had a family, they did all that for 15, 20, 30 years. And now a lot of them are rediscovering windsurfing or winging or kiting or whatever it is that's bringing them back to the water. But they always say, those are the best times of my life. And I get it.
Yeah. You mentioned the Berkeley Worlds, 1976, correct?
Yeah.
And you said they were the first ones you went. I didn't know they were the first ones you went, but they are the first ones you won, right? At 13 years old. Is that, it's pre-internet, so all these informations are a little bit.
Right. That was way pre-internet.
Yeah. I want to know, did you expect to even do good? Did you you windsurfed for a couple of years, and it's so, now where I talk to some of the younger guys and I'm like, shit, it took me 5 years to learn to forward. And the guy would ask, couldn't you go on YouTube? I'm like,
right.
No, no. So in these days, it was even you didn't know who was good. You couldn't ask around and whatever. You were in Oahu. The event was in California. Did you have any expectation? What do you even remember from that time?
Well, the way I got there, we had the summer of 1976, we had the Hawaii Regional Windsurfer Championships. And what people need to know as well is back then there was only one windsurfer. It was the windsurfer. There was one brand, one sail size, one boom made out of wood, one board, one dagger board. That was it. There was no second brand. There was no Mistral. There was no wind glider. It was just the windsurfer. So it was a one design, and it was just course racing, triangle racing, like sailboat racing. So we had the Hawaii Regional Championships in that summer, and if you had more than 50 entries into your event, Windsurfer International would give a ticket to the winner to the North American Championships. We didn't have 50 windsurfers in Hawaii at the time, so we entered dogs and girlfriends and whatever to get enough entries to have a ticket. I ended up winning that event, and so that's what got me the airfare to Berkeley, California. And went to Berkeley, had no idea, if I was good, bad, you know, I was small. I knew that, you know, I was the smallest guy there by far. And I was pretty fast, especially in light wind. You know, I weighed, I think, less than 100 pounds at the time, but I was still pretty good. I could go when the wind was strong too, but in light wind, I had a real advantage. And the winds that event were pretty light. I ended up getting second. I didn't win, but Mike Waltz won, and he already had a free airfare to the Worlds from the Worlds the year before or something. So I got his airfare to the Worlds. And that's what got me to the World Championships in the Bahamas, was that free airfare. We weren't, you know, I didn't come from a wealthy family. When I went to the Bahamas, a couple months later to the World Championships in '76, I was 13 years old. I went by myself. Neither of my parents went. I slept on the floor of the windsurfer staff photographer. He's a photographer named Steve Wilkins, who was from Honolulu. Took a lot of the really early windsurfing photos. Like if you see the really early Hawaiian windsurfing shots, they were all Steve Wilkins photos. So he kind of chaperoned me to make sure that I got there. I slept on the floor of his hotel room. Went to that event. There were 400 and something competitors. I was the only kid there. So all these giant European guys wearing Speedos and stuff. I was like, oh my God. And it was culture shock. It was amazing. I had no idea, again, if I was good or bad or how it would end up. And again, fortunately, the conditions were pretty favorable for me. It was pretty light wind. I ended up winning, and the rest is history. I won another airfare at winning in the Bahamas. It gave me a free airfare to Sardinia, Italy in 1977. I won there, which gave me a free airfare to Cancun, Mexico in '78. I won there, which gave me a free airfare to Greece and Florida in '79. We had 2 world championships in 1979 because it was the year of that whole Cold War, Russia, US thing. And so Olympics, they were separated. So we had 2 world championships, one including the Russians and those guys and one without. So I was 3rd, I think, in Greece and 1st in Florida. And then kind of continued from there until the sport turned pro in 1981, which was the year I graduated from high school. So really good timing there.
Yeah. So before you graduated, it was just basically like you would just go off to these events and then come back and be a normal kid and go windsurfing after school. Was that it? No income from windsurfing, No,
sponsorship. Back then it was strictly amateur. Windsurfing went Olympic in 1984, and at that point, if you took $1 for anything, you were no longer an amateur and couldn't compete in the Olympics. So actually, in 1981, the first 2 professional events that we had, that I won, the Maui Speed Crossing and the what was the other one? The Maui Grand Prix were the first 2 big events. I donated the prize money, half to my school, half to the U.S. Olympic Committee, so I could retain my amateur status. Because at that point, I wasn't sure if it was, if I was going to go to the Olympics or try to go to the Olympics or turn pro, because the sport was just kind of evolving into the potential to maybe earn some money then. And what I did is I was going to go to university in California. I was accepted to UC Santa Cruz. And I could see that maybe something was going to happen with pro windsurfing. So I deferred admissions, said, well, I'm going to take a year off before I go to university and see what this becomes, see what is a professional windsurfer. And never went back. I'm still waiting to go to college. So it was
never too
very
late.
lucky. And at that point, again, it was amateur. There weren't that many events, so I wasn't missing a lot of school. I didn't actually windsurf that much. School was really important to me. I got really good grades through high school, so I was only missing, for maybe 2 events a year. And even during the week, I usually didn't windsurf after school, just on weekends. because I was lucky actually, because now my high school education is all I have, and I'm glad that I paid attention and did well, because I'm using it every day and in what I do in business and whatnot, and so
Yeah.
I'm lucky in that respect.
Again, like pre-internet times, pre-emails,
Pre-cell phone.
pre-cell phone, you were, I don't know if fax was even around, telegrams maybe, I don't know what you guys, like you say, like I thought that there might be something going on with the sport becoming pro and whatever. How do you even hear those things? How do you even get
Well,
these kind of
we were kind of at the center of it. Yeah, everything was phone back then. There was no fax yet. There was teletext. We had a telex machine in the living room, because at that point my dad stopped teaching high school and had already began doing design work for Mistral, and that he started in 1980. So we had a telex machine in the office, which was like tick, 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 like something out of an old war movie. But the whole vibe was coming from Hawaii. So anything that was going on in windsurfing, this was the focal point. Kailua was the epicenter for development. We had the Pan Am World Cup. So the very first custom boards, the very first European guys that worked for different brands that were coming into the sport, they all found their way to Kailua. And the magazines, Surf Magazine, Wind Magazine, France, High Wind Magazine, Japan, they were all doing their feature stuff here. Not necessarily Maui yet at that time.
Oahu,
it was
yeah.
still more Oahu. But so it became, pretty easy for me, because I was, to a degree, the guy everybody was looking at that point, because by then I had been world champion many times. I lived in the mecca for the development of the sport, surrounded by, a lot of the best guys in the sport. So again, I was very lucky to be in the right place at the right time. I didn't need to be like, if I lived in Hawaii and windsurfing was taking off in France, I wouldn't be here right now. Even if it was California and I was in Hawaii, I wouldn't be here right now. I just luckily happened to be right exactly where the sport was booming. And so people were coming to me. It's not like I was searching sponsorship. They were coming and saying, hey, we want you to ride our stuff, or hey, we want you to use our wetsuits. Hey, we want you to use our whatever it is. So very much luck of being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. So the sport turns pro and there's a bunch of contests popping up and you decide to go pro, which probably wasn't easy because you have the Olympics kind of.
Yeah, it was a big decision. Yeah.
Potential. Okay, so let's talk about that decision a little bit. Like what came into that? Like you're basically deciding to become a pro in a sport that doesn't really have a foundation yet, let's say.
Yeah, there were no pros in any of these sports at that point. There were no pro surfers, there were no pro skateboarders, snowboarding didn't even exist yet. It was uncharted territory. And so there was no path, and that's why it was, okay, I'm going to cross my fingers, take a year before I go to university and see what happens, see where it goes. But there was so much momentum and energy at that point. Already in 1981, for example, we had the Japan Cup, and pretty much everybody went. It was on Niijima Island in Japan. It was a one design event on a really horrible board called the Morpho Surfer. It was like, it wasn't Division 2 yet. It was like Division 1, if you remember those days. It was like a semi-round bottom board. Just horrible. It was slow on every point of sail. It was unstable. It was heavy. It was horrible. But everybody went because they offered incredible prize money. I think at that point it was $50,000 total prize money, $10,000 cash first prize, which in 1981 was quite a bit of money. even by today's standards in our sports, man, first prize barely gets
Grand.
that. It's not like windsurfing in the 80s where we were getting $250,000 in prize money. So, I went off to that, went home with $10,000 in cash in an envelope. That made me think, damn, this is really turning into something. That was almost as much as my dad made in a year teaching the last year he
Yeah,
taught.
that's like 50 grand now, isn't it? Or maybe more.
Yeah, so it pretty quickly became really quite substantial. It took off from there, and that was, several years before the World Tour was formed. 1981, 1982, into the early 1983, there were just pro events all over the world. We had the Rip Pro Quicksilver Classic in Australia. We had the Japan Cup. We had the Sony Surflight in Australia. We had the Hang 10 World Cup in California. We had the O'Neill events. There was a lot of money and a lot of, just growth in the sport. We were inventing equipment and disciplines. And it wasn't until 83 that the WSMA was formed, the World Sailboard Manufacturers Association, and a real world tour was formed with a professional world title. Before that, it was just pro events around the world that you'd go to and win, but there was no ranking. And when the WSMA was formed, that is really the beginning of the PWA. The WSMA turned into the WBA, which turned into the PBA, which turned into today's Pro Tour.
Yeah. So you mentioned the equipment by 81, basically by the early 80s, it was already like taking off and changing at a pace that I think it's kind of hard to imagine even today. Like, what was it like? You were just there in Oahu and your buddy down the road decided, I don't know, to chop off 3 feet of the nose or
The
put a
tail.
window in his sail or
Yeah. All of
whatever,
that.
like.
Yeah, it was Pat Love, who was a local guy. He started putting the windows in the sails, and then my dad started sewing windows in the sails. We went from having that little tiny square window to these giant windows so we could actually see where we were going. The Storm dagger board, because windsurfers just had a big dagger board. We did the swept back dagger board. That was Larry Stanley, Mike Horgan, Ken Clyde, Dennis Davidson. There was this little crew of guys that were, rapidly developing the windsurfer.
Foot straps.
Putting the front of a board in a black plastic bag, putting it in the sun, heating up the board so you could bend more nose rocker into the board. We called it the super scoop because the windsurfer was really flat rockered. And if you rode waves with it, it always purled. So you'd heat up the nose of the board, bend it way up, make a super scoop, and then you could go ride waves out at Flat Island. Things like that, where we took the existing gear. And then my dad started making custom boards in the garage, going, well, there has to be a better way than these big plastic boards. So I started making custom boards, started out 12 feet long and then slowly started getting shorter, eventually getting rid of the dagger board and just having 3 fins in the tail. Foot straps came in 1978. Before that, we had boogie bumps. So the boards, especially custom boards, were pretty slippery. The windsurfer was really slippery, but you would take a rasp and make big gouges in the plastic to stick your feet into.
Okay, so no wax yet.
No wax. And custom boards, you couldn't take a rasp and make big grooves in your board, so you waxed it. Wax is still pretty slippery. And so we glued down boogie board foam, called them boogie bumps. So you had strips of boogie board foam to kind of push your toes against before foot straps. And then in 1978, put the first foot straps on board, and that changed everything. In the beginning, I only used back straps. I didn't use front straps. And then eventually put front and back straps.
So you realized back then that if you do 1-footers, it will be the front foot that goes out.
Exactly. You already knew.
Yeah. So then you can go from just because it was just racing at the beginning, right? And then you can go from, you have foot straps, you can jump and you can ride waves. And was that just straight away more appealing to you? Being in Hawaii.
it was appealing from the very first day. I mean, that's the thing. Just that plain old windsurfer with a wooden boom and a triangle sail and a big heavy board. Even when that's all there was, that was just as much fun as what we have today. I mean, it was so cool, and it just got cooler and cooler, and it got more and more fun. But it's not like I was waiting for something else, right? It just kept happening. Like the windsurfer was the best thing ever. It was a surfboard with a sail on it. Like it was the best of everything. And then it got even better with custom, and it got even better with shorter boards, and it got even better with faster sails. So the stoke kept coming, but it's not like it wasn't fun before that stuff. It was already so much fun. Like,
No, I'm just getting at the fact that, you know, later on you kind of really went into wave sailing. Of course, you
yeah,
kept racing. You always raced, but wave sailing was really your
yeah.
thing, wasn't it? And it's
Well,
funny you say that it was the coolest thing ever. And like, funny how now you look at the gear and it's so freaking cool, yet the general public doesn't really see windsurfing as that cool, doesn't it? And then you look at all these photos from back in the day and you're like, you know,
yeah,
and then it was like the coolest thing ever, you know, like,
right.
so
Yeah.
that's
Times
pretty
change.
crazy. I mean, it is, yeah, I say it with a heavy heart, let's say, but but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So then,
I just say that the sport's gotten more exclusive again.
yeah,
Not
that's a
small.
good way.
More
That's a
exclusive.
good way to put it, for sure.
Yeah.
And in a way they have, because they've gotten somewhat hard, like all the evolution like you've made, for example, in, you know, 30-40 years. It's hard for a guy to just learn it in 2 weeks, what took you guys 30 years. So it is a little bit of that, but there is also the element of, you know, all the other sports and just a lot of cool shit in the world around that just spreads the attention, I
There's
guess.
a lot more choices to go have fun now. Yeah.
Yeah. Coming back to your story, you get on tour, you get on the professional tour, and then the disciplines pop up, and, you know, you start having short boards for slalom and some wave sailing or some freestyle, and you win. And then some guys, I guess, a little younger than you, 10 years younger and whatever, Anders is not 10 years younger than you, but, you know, Anders, Robby, I don't know, Phil in course racing, all these guys, they come and it starts to get,
Phil is older than me.
yeah, but he came a lot later.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, exactly.
it was funny because first I interviewed Anders and he said, like, the sport was super fun. We were having tons of fun until Phil came with his fucking little notebook and started writing all the data down. And then I interviewed Phil. I gave him that quote and he says, no, it was Robby. Robby was so serious and so on it with the gear and with not partying and with this and that. I'm like,
well, that's true, but I wasn't writing anything down. It was all feel for me. But yeah, I wasn't partying. It was serious, no doubt. But no notebooks or anything. It was just practice.
yeah. And that, I mean, just paint us a picture of these days, because also Anders told me, like, we were at dinner with Bjorn and Robby told me, like, Robby told us, don't worry, boys, it's on me. I made my money before you guys came in. So describe us a little bit those early 80s, all that boom for windsurfing just globally, and how it felt to be in the middle of that whole whirlwind, I guess. I don't know.
They were pretty amazing times. For me, I always had a real sense of appreciation for how lucky I was to be doing this. And so I took it pretty seriously. Like Anders said, you know, I wasn't the party guy. I didn't do anything that would compromise my ability to be able to do my job. And although I loved it and I had so much fun doing it, I didn't want to mess it up by, like, you wouldn't see me on a dirt bike. You wouldn't see me, doing airs and a half pipe on a skateboard. I wouldn't do things that could potentially risk injury, for example, because I knew you miss one event, you're done for the year, you're ranking. It was also because there was no real path forward, that you didn't know if it was going to last 6 months or a year and be done. And that was fun. Now I got to do something else. I always had that fear that there wasn't a long-term future in it. There was a hope. There was I'm going to do as good as I can. I want to be the best representative for my sponsors that I can be. I want to win as much as I can, because that's going to help maybe being able to do this next year as well, if it lasts. And there was a certain fear of losing as well. It wasn't that I loved winning. I didn't love beating other guys. I really hated losing. And I wanted to do whatever it would take to be able to keep doing it. This is all I do. It's still all I do. I don't know how to do anything else. I always said, if I wasn't doing this, I'd be working at McDonald's. So I took it real seriously. I trained real hard. I wasn't the guy that was constantly developing equipment. I'd take my equipment that I had and learn to ride it as good as I could. And then when I got better equipment, okay, I would reluctantly start to work on that to ride it as good as I could. I wasn't one of those guys that had gear that was better than my ability. My ability was probably sometimes better than my gear. Like, I was the last guy to go to vertical fins. I was the last guy to use cambers. I used my camber sails. I took the cambers out because I didn't like the feel. To me, it's always about feel. And, the more time on the water to get used to your gear, so you could ride it with your eyes closed. Where other guys, they'd come to the beach with 10 boards, like Bjorn and Anders in those days of racing. Literally, they'd have a caddy and they'd have 8 or 10 boards on the beach. And it was this constant, which board am I going to use? In and out and in and out. And that's what launched the incredible development of the sport. But it wasn't coming from me. I had my one slalom board and I was like, I was going to ride that board no matter what. And it worked for a long time until it didn't. Like, for me, the switch from raked fins, which was pure style and technique, to vertical fins, which was pure boat speed and equipment. Like, you could win on equipment that wasn't all that fast in the days of beach starts and swept back fins. Once it went to water start, figure 8, vertical fins, weight jackets, if your gear wasn't fast, you had no chance. And eventually, even if your gear was fast, but you didn't weigh 90 kilos, you had no chance. Because, I would wear a weight jacket with 10 kilos, but Bjorn was also wearing a weight jacket with 12 kilos or, whatever it was. It just became this crazy arms race in equipment that I wasn't that good at that. Once the sport went in that direction, I held on for a while, but when it went from feel to technology and gear, I got a little bit lost in the shuffle. I went from winning everything to getting 7ths, and eventually when I started getting 11ths and 13ths, that's when I stopped racing. But it took a long time, fortunately. It was a very gradual transition until it became super
definitely.
technical.
You mentioned like you were kind of, you didn't like losing, and then you would do everything it took to win and whatever. But I mean, by the late 80s, you're like 20 plus times world champion, and it's got to be hard to reinvent yourself every year. Like, every year I'm going to go to that same place, whatever, start in Japan, finish in Silt, go to that same place, do that same thing. Okay, beach starts are fun. Making money is definitely fun and whatever. But like, how do you re-up every year, re-up the motivation, re-up the fight? It was probably getting harder, which makes it maybe easier to motivate yourself, right? But
yeah, I never had a hard time motivating myself. For me, it was never work. even when it became really difficult, like in racing, to be in the top 5, it was still fun, because it was constantly evolving. It's not like we were racing the same board around the same course. We were going to the same spots year after year after year, but there became something for me kind of nostalgic and cool in that as well. You know, watching people grow up, you know, getting to know the owners of restaurants that you've been going to for 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. And I wasn't the kind of guy that would go to an event and look around and be a tourist. Like, I went to the spot, I drove there, I rigged up my gear, and I stayed there the entire time. I never came early and looked around the country. I never stayed longer and looked around and played tourist. Like, I went to Almanar, that's all I saw, Almanar. When I went to Silt, I stayed in Westerland. Like, that's it.
Did you not regret after a while, like once you wrapped it up, did you not regret, like, fuck, I've traveled all this thing and all I saw was the beach and the waves, you know? Like,
No, because I was absolutely not interested. I was just focused on that. I wasn't going to go ride somewhere else that was maybe better conditions. I rode where the contest was going to be. But the cool thing was, as I slowly transitioned out of competing for a living, I got to enjoy all of that. I could go to a place and say, wow, I've been here 20 times. I've never seen this. This is super cool. Because when I stopped competing, it's not like I retired from being a professional athlete. It actually just went to a whole new level. And that's where I could start to enjoy the sport differently. I could ride different gear. I could go to different places. I could, you know, spend a little time smelling the flowers, going and riding that spot down there instead of the competition area. And so it kind of opened up.
yeah. And you definitely, you know, you definitely earned that, but I would just be scared, like, maybe it won't happen, you know, and then you go to Japan and what are you going to tell your grandkids? Like, I had this exact thing in Korea, out of all the places. I mean, you're lucky
Right.
you didn't go there, not to maybe downplay or offend anybody, but yeah, Jinha Beach is doesn't get you very, very inspired.
Right.
And then you're like, you know, the boys are going on a night out to Seoul, you know, and I'm like, no, you know, whatever, I don't want to, whatever. And then you're like, the fuck am I going to tell my grandkids, you know, that I went to Korea and all I saw was Jinha Beach, you know, and I didn't even have kimchi or anything, you know? So, you know what I mean? But,
yeah, I never looked at it that way.
yeah.
I mean, you got enough culture, you saw things. If that's all there was and I never got to go back, at least I got to go there, and I gave it 100% and did really well. You know, I had something to show for it. That at the end of the day, yeah, I didn't really feel like I was missing anything. I felt like I was gaining as a result of my focus. So
Yeah.
that's all right.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
everybody's different. You know, there's guys that were on tour to seize the opportunity, to smell the roses, to party, they weren't there to win, and they were never going to win. But that's okay, because it's not what they were there for. They were there for the experience, and it was cool. I had a lot of those friends, you know, I appreciated it. The fact that everybody's different and everyone approached competition and that whole windsurfing lifestyle differently. You know, you had the party animals that would show up at the beach straight from the disco in the morning and go out into their heat. And you're just like, oh my God, how is he doing that? But that wasn't me.
No, I'm not saying about the partying or whatever, but you mentioned that you never saw anything else and whatever, you know, but yeah, dedication, I guess. Dedication. Speaking of dedication, definitely a dedication. When I think of you, I think of dedication to make everything as professional as possible, also in terms of image, films, sponsorships. I mean, I remember in Silt, you went up on stage and you just bust out the perfect German. I mean, didn't get that at school, did you? It's just like...
Well, that's actually one of those things where I said I paid attention in high school. I actually I took German for 2 years in high school, so
Oh wow.
I had the base. I went to Puno. I was really lucky to go to a good high school where you could take Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, French, or German. And at that point, I'm like, well, windsurfing's huge in Germany. I had some German fans like pen pals, and like, well, everybody says German's really hard and I shouldn't take it, but I'm kind of interested in it. I've been there. There's a connection. There's a lot of German windsurfers that come to Hawaii. I'm going to take German. I don't care if it's hard. And so I learned the very basic, der die das die dem die das die bist durch vorgegen, the conjugating verbs and all that. And then traveling over the years, just listening to it, hanging out with Ralph Bachschuster and Bjorn Schrader and, all those guys, it slowly kind of came in so that eventually I could speak it. But it was paying attention and getting an A in those couple of years of German in high school that gave me the base to be able to do it. So again, I was lucky that I was even able to take German in high school and that I paid attention.
So we cross off the first urban legend that you learned to learn German as a pro already, just to be more appealing to the sponsors in Germany and whatever.
That was certainly a big part of it. To be able to do that, I'm sure it helped my income over the last couple of decades for sure. So
we're only in the 80s. No, it's okay. Speed it up from here. Don't worry.
No, all good.
Okay.
I didn't used to like talking about the past. I was never one of those guys that wanted to look backward. I always said, I want to look forward, but I'm enjoying looking back at this point. I'm old enough that I can appreciate the water under the bridge.
Okay, so we covered one urban legend about the German language. Let's cover some more also about sponsorships. So kind of common knowledge around the beach is that at some point your Quicksilver contract just went into shares basically rather than salary. True? Not true? Secret? Can't talk about it.
Not true. Signed my Quicksilver contract, the very first one in '82. At that point, I was sponsored by O'Neill Wetsuits. That was my first paying sponsor. And at that point, wetsuit companies only made wetsuits, clothing companies only made clothing. It wasn't, years later, I had to decide between the two because they both grew into wetsuits clothing, and I had to choose and chose to stay with Quicksilver. But no, what happened was I was sponsored until this year. So I've been with Quicksilver until COVID, and so 37 years under contract as a pro the entire time, always paid contract salary until COVID. And unfortunately, I just got dropped halfway through my final 3-year contract because of the obvious difficulties that a lot of industries and companies are having due to COVID-19. So no, I've been a paid Quicksilver rider nonstop the entire time. The shares thing was, again, being in the right place at the right time and seizing opportunity when it came. I was friends with the Australian guys that started Quicksilver. The guys that ran Quicksilver, head of marketing for Quicksilver at the time that I signed my first contract was a guy named Harry Hodge. I was pretty big in Europe. Windsurfing was pretty big in Europe. Surfing was pretty small. And in 1984, winter 84, 85, we formed a company called Napali SA in the south of France in Saint-Jean-de-Luz. So I was one of the founding shareholders, along with John Winship, Harry Hodge, Bridget Derry Grand, Jeff Hackman, and myself, to purchase the license for Quicksilver for Europe.
I was sponsored by that company, actually.
All right.
I had a contract with that company, yeah.
Awesome. So yeah, I was one of the founders of Quicksilver Europe there. We started out making just board shorts and t-shirts in a little tiny factory in St. Jean de Luz. We were actually the first licensee in the world to branch out of surf clothes, because we're like, okay, Europe in the wintertime, who's buying board shorts? But they're buying ski jackets and whatnot. So we made the first, the big neon Quicksilver jacket with the huge neon, like a black puffy jacket with a big fluorescent orange Quicksilver logo on the back. Kind of paved the way for Quicksilver to start expanding into different types of clothing. And so I invested in that, obviously, with money. It wasn't given to me. It was a big investment for me at the time. But I thought it made sense and it was a good opportunity. And then we grew it and grew it and grew it to the point until we were pretty underfinanced. We sold it to Quicksilver Inc., the American company, who bought, Quicksilver globally in 1991. And so that was a really good investment, but that was secondary to my sponsorship through.
But
it
must have run under that name for a long time until it became board riders.
Board riders, it was Nepali up until a year and a half ago when it became board riders.
Yeah. Because I remember being on the contract. Okay.
Yeah, so
that's
part of being a pro is looking at opportunities, and there was one, and then in 1988, 89, I guess it was, with Pierre Agnès, my late really good friend, who became the eventual president, CEO of Quicksilver globally. We started a company called Omarif together in Caberton, Hossegor, and we were the licensee for Quicksilver wetsuits, watches, eyewear, and grew that also quite big until we sold it again to Inc. Several years later. So I've had some really good business opportunities investing in the Quicksilver brand over the years as well.
Okay. That was much better than that beach legend.
Yeah, but it wasn't being paid. It was investing, using my money to do luckily good things with. But through that, I was always sponsored.
Yeah. Beach legend number 3. Windsurfing was the first sport Red Bull sponsored, and you and Bjorn were the first athletes that Red Bull sponsored.
No, Mr. Mateschitz, Didi Mateschitz, the founder of Red Bull, had a really interesting philosophy in the very beginning. So no conventional marketing, no conventional sports, really wanted to give opportunity and shed light to under the radar sports. And there were several before me. Bjorn was one of the first in Europe. I was the first international athlete. But he was sponsoring a rock climber and there were several. I was kind of in the second tier as the first sort of non-European. Luckily, because it was a great opportunity for me. I loved the product. And the way it happened is I discovered Red Bull, and I have a B vitamin deficiency. I've known that since I was a little kid. If I don't take my B vitamin, I don't think straight. Luckily my pediatrician discovered that in school because I couldn't focus. I'd read a page in a book, and then when I'm finished, I wouldn't even know what I read. And he's like, because of Robby's diet, because I didn't eat any vegetables, that was really bad. Maybe he's B vitamin deficient. So I started taking B supplement when I was a kid. And it gives me immediate focus and clarity. So if I would drive to the event in the morning and I forgot to take my B vitamin, I would freaking race back to the hotel to get my vitamin and take it, because I just don't have the sharpness of mind if I don't take it. Red Bull does the same thing. The taurine and vitamin B in Red Bull gives me that clarity. It's not like coffee where you get jittery. I can't drink a lot of coffee. I just have to run to the bathroom when I'm like this. Red Bull gives me, I say it's like sharpening my pencil, right? It just increases your focus, your ability to concentrate, your reflexes, your mental cognitive, being on it. And so I was like, I love this. I was buying it and putting it in my luggage and taking it home. And then finally I organized a meeting with Mr. Mateschitz one year that I was at ISPO, not to necessarily go try to get sponsorship, but to see if I could maybe get a deal where I could get Red Bull in Hawaii, because I loved the product. And met him. That was when Red Bull was still quite small. We hit it off really well. He obviously had windsurfed previously, as well as many people in Europe. And kind of the rest is history. So it wasn't like going looking for $1. It wasn't like, in the beginning, I was only sponsored for products, no branding, no stickers, no hat. Kind of grew organically, because at that point, he didn't believe in taking a guy that was already a top athlete and then suddenly branding him. So I didn't start to be branded by Red Bull until we invented kite surfing. And I started running around doing the kite surfing tour, during events, et cetera. And then I'm like, well, this is a new sport. We might as well brand me. And then once I was branded kiting, it was kind of weird not to be branded windsurfing. So the branding kind of grew from there organically. But that's been a great relationship, an amazing company, an amazing founder that, it still blows my mind what he's been able to do with that brand and that product. And I'm super proud to be associated with them.
Definitely. Other like really fond, like outside of industry sponsorships, you've had so many over the years, like what do you remember? I mean, you guys went through anything from beer and ciggies to, travel agencies at events famously, and to any kind of products, really. Like it's nuts. It's like, it was like football back then.
Yeah, I mean, the events in the beginning, like personally, I didn't ever have a lot of sponsors. I figured if I had a few good ones that paid me well, I didn't want any more. I didn't have more space on my sail. I didn't want to look like a billboard. And to me, sponsorship was also time, a time commitment that I didn't have. So, I could have made more money by gathering more sponsors, but I never wanted it. I wanted just a few really good sponsors and not a whole bunch of little ones. So you never saw tons of little stickers on my sail. That's just not what I was about and why I did it. But in terms of the industry, yeah, if you look at the 80s, for example, it was Pall Mall cigarettes, Peter Stuyvesant cigarettes. It was Sometime cigarettes in Japan. A lot of cigarette sponsorships before that was outlawed. Smirnoff. There were definitely some alcohol ones if you went to South Africa, etc. When the cigarette money dried up, that was the end of the really big money in windsurfing. They kind of camouflaged it for a while, like Peter Stuyvesant travel and Pall Mall fashion and things like that. But that obviously didn't last either. And then it started to become more tourism authorities like the Canary Islands, places that wanted to shed light on their area from a tourist standpoint. And that's kind of what it's become now. I mean, the only real sponsors of the tour at the moment are,
Places.
national government, tourism authorities, et cetera. And the real outside sponsorship money, for the most part, has kind of dried up. It's a lot more difficult to come by.
Yeah. We covered success to some extent. We covered money to some extent. Don't want to ask you figures. I guess fame comes with it. In Europe, like you say, it was crazy in the 80s. Living in Hawaii, not exactly the place you can hide or whatever. Did it get to a point where it became a little bit of a burden that you kind of, had to escape to a non-windsurf place from time to time or whatever?
I mean, not really. I was really lucky. I'm still really lucky. Just the sports that I ended up in and where I live and how everything evolved. I had the benefit when windsurfing was really big, that it was big on the other side of the world, that nobody knew me at home. Nobody knew me in Hawaii. and then I went to Europe, and at least in the windsurfing world was famous. But at home, nobody would recognize me walking down the street. I'm more famous now here in Hawaii than I was in the boom of windsurfing, because nobody noticed then. It wasn't in the news. Windsurfing was never a big sport here. And it wasn't until stand-up paddling and kiting to a degree, and the more recent stuff, that we started to get some focus here locally, like, you know, on the extreme sports channels and like local coverage. Like now people know who I am here, but 30 years ago, 20 years ago, they didn't.
Yeah.
So it was more from stand-up and the more recent stuff. So I was really lucky that it didn't follow me around. I was nobody at home, and I think it helped keep my feet on the ground to a degree, and it was never tiring. And it's not like, oh, there are people bothering me all the time. It was never like that. And again, even at the big time of windsurfing, we were still a pretty small sport in the whole scope of things.
Yeah.
It's not like we were on TV all the time and people would recognize you on the street, and it wasn't like Boris Becker or, you know, Tiger Woods.
Well, except for Germany, maybe. I think Jimmy Diaz mentioned that there was like a poll in Germany for like most recognizable athletes, and it was like Boris Becker, Michael Schumacher, Robby Naish. And then
well, Germany's different because I've been going there for so long that eventually it's like you
say it's not it's not tiring, and it's not a burden. But I remember walking down the street in Silt, and there's like a bunch of people, like, I don't know, 100 people, like a gathering, you know, and you think that inside maybe something happened. I don't know, somebody's dying in there or whatever, you know, they're doing CPR on someone, or I don't know, some artist is in there or whatever. And I just peek over, and there's you just signing away, you know, just randomly on the street. So yeah, I think you're a little modest on this on this part.
Yeah, well, yeah, Germany's a little different.
Yeah.
But I always appreciated it too. I figured, you know, if somebody wanted my autograph, it was like, awesome. You know, that's it. I never looked at it as a burden. It was like, that's insane. I can't believe that guy wants me to sign his T-shirt. I don't know whose name I would want on my T-shirt. So I always appreciate it. Like, hell yeah, I'll sign that until 10 o'clock at night if I have to. If there's still a guy standing there that wants me to sign his T-shirt, I'm going to stay as long as, you know, they want me to. So yeah, I always thought it was super cool.
Yeah. Fast forward not really, but fast forward to the beginning of the 90s. And in 91, you win what turned out to be your last wave world title. And then, but by that time, like you say, you know, the racing career kind of tailored off. You're still up there in the waves for a couple more years. But by that time, you've been on tour for 10 years. You've been winning for 15 or whatever. Did it not cross your mind to just, you know, venture into something else already? I mean, it's like, yeah, you have, you know, you won everything that there was to win. You made your money. You're, you know, like, yeah, I wonder what just, you know, why stay? Why keep going to Silt, you know?
Well, I think, again, the main reason was maybe the difference between why I do this or did this, have done this, and why other people do. I never set a goal. I was never out to accomplish something. I always did it just because it's what I do. And I enjoyed it. And I always felt so lucky to be able to do it, because this is what people do when they retire. This is what people do on holidays if they save up enough money to go and actually have the equipment and the time and the spot. That's what I actually get to do every day. And I think I had enough appreciation for that and enough enjoyment out of doing it. It's not like it ever got boring. If it got boring, I would have stopped. But I wasn't one of those guys that like set a target, set a goal. I want to do this in life. And then when I win and when I get to the top of that hill, I got to find another hill to climb somewhere. Like I'm going to start playing golf. I don't want to fucking play golf. I want to go windsurfing. I want to go ride waves. I want to, maybe I'm stuck in a rut, but I still enjoy this more than I enjoy anything else. Like, I love cars. All my cars are broken because I don't have enough time to work on my cars because I'm windsurfing and winging and surfing too much. So yeah, I don't think I ever got to that point where I said, okay, that was awesome. I'm successful. Now I'm going to try something else. It's like, no, this is what I do. I don't want to do anything else.
That's sick. That's sick.
And
But then I guess
I'm still sharing that stoke, which, and at the end of the day, as a pro, and you can look in it different ways. Some people think they're a pro because they're really good, and that's why they're getting paid, or they're winning on this gear, and that's why they're getting paid. And the day they stop winning, they're not going to get paid anymore. They're gone and they move on. I never looked at it that way. I looked at my sponsorships as, yeah, I better win if I'm competing because that's why they're paying me, or at least come close. Or if I'm not winning, be doing something to make people want to buy that stuff. You know, this is about lifestyle. Not many people are windsurfing or kiting or stand-up paddling because they want to go beat another guy. These are sports you do because they fill you with life. They get into your blood. You love it. They're healthy. They're fun. Their competition's a tiny little part of it. So I realized pretty early on that my sponsorship wasn't just to go get first, second, or third. It was to instill that passion into people that hopefully they go and want to buy the brand that I represent, whether it's a t-shirt or a pair of shorts or a sail or a board or, you know, a beverage that, and you can do that outside of competition too, right? I mean, I realized pretty early on that just the competition was not that big a part of why I was paid to do what I do and why I love to do it and how I can share the passion for these sports with other people. And like when I retired, I guess, I don't even know when I retired from competition. It wasn't like I stopped. I just slowly transitioned out. And to me, nothing really changed. I became more intense as a pro without competing than when I was competing in some ways, in terms of trying to create value for my sponsors and to share my stoke with people. You know, I look at myself as an ambassador for water sports, and I'm just trying to shed some of that positive light into the world and get that influence into people's lives. There's enough negative out there, right? If you look at half the shit on the internet and on TV, it's doing nothing positive for anybody. And, you know, people will say, well, what are you doing for the environment? What's your stay on global warming? I'm not standing on a box trying to sell politics or any agenda. The more I can connect people with the environment, the more I can get people out in the ocean, tasting the water and getting on the beach and seeing the trash on the beach and making it part of their lives and, you know, getting disconnected from their phone and connected with the ocean and connected with the wind. A lot of people don't even know what direction the wind is. You and I, it's east wind, it's north wind, it's offshore, it's onshore, it's side shore. You know, it connects you with nature in a way that most people just don't have in their lives. That is way more valuable than saying, save the turtles, clean the oceans, you know, because it becomes part of their universe where it becomes important to them.
Yeah.
Just
or I came third, right? Like you mentioned.
Yeah. So it's
But I mean, this is the way of I mean, when you're sponsored, I guess that's why the tour exists, and because it's so hard to quantify sharing the stoke.
Yeah.
It's so hard to quantify filling people with energy. You sponsor guys, you don't put as an objective there, share the stoke, you know?
Well, we kind of do, especially, I mean, if you look at historically, the kind of guys I sponsor, not a lot of them are always winning, you know, the tour. Sharing the stoke's a really big part of it. You know, winning's great, because if you win, you get a notoriety where people will listen to what you have to say, right? You're good. You created a platform. There's a certain level of respect. Where if you're a guy that's never competed at all, ever, it's harder to get that notoriety. But these days it can happen. I mean, there's really successful, famous sports people that have never competed. I mean, look at Laird Hamilton. You know, I've known Laird for a really long time. He's never competed. You know, he knows where his value lies, and he's taken that ball and run with it really, really well. So especially in this day and age, there's different ways of being a professional athlete than just being competition based, especially with the internet.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get to sponsorships and all that. But before, we need to talk about how you even got into the business. And I guess like 95, Gastra gets sold to, I think, who is still now the owner Knut Burig.
No, Knut was way after that.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
I was born in 91, so.
Yeah, no, it had been bought and sold, and it was bought by a Hong Kong-based company, and I didn't want to do the big go around again. They were going to bring in a managing director that I had worked with a couple of owners previous, and I just didn't think that was the direction I wanted to go again. And they wanted to dismantle the team that we had built on Maui, the R&D team, because we were doing all the development here with Don Montague, Pete Cabrina, me, and a guy named Pat Carell. And they wanted to dismantle the whole Hawaii thing and move all the development to Hong Kong. And I was like, fuck. I didn't want to do that. And I wasn't going to go like sign with Neil Pride after all those years with Gastra. That wouldn't have been at all believable, right? And so it seemed the only option was to try and keep the team together. And that's when we formed Naish Sales Hawaii, which was a huge decision. I really didn't want to do it. It was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I was about to say, we're talking all about sharing the stoke and being on the beach and whatever. And knowing what you know now, you know that it's basically strapping yourself to a fucking computer for,
well, back then computers were a small part of it, and not like today. But yeah, it was a big decision. I was like, God, do I really want to do this? You know? But we were small. All we made is sales, you know, and there was no target to ever be bigger than that. I was like, oh, let's just keep our team together. You know, Pete was doing the marketing, Don was doing the designs, Pat was doing the admin. It was like, okay, we'll just keep it small, make windsurfing sales, and it kind of grew from there.
Yeah, it didn't really work out to stay small, did it?
It did, because it was super gradual and slow the way it evolved. You know, we started doing kites developing in 98, got the license for the first inflated struts from Bruno Lagagno to start making Naish kites for the 99 for the 2000 season. You know, so we were 5 years of just doing windsurfing sales, and then obviously got into kiting, and that took us to a whole new level with the birth of kite surfing.
Yeah, and then somewhere in the meantime, I don't know the exact timeline, but for years you had the skull on your Mistrals, your Naish logo on your Mistral boards, and that kind of, I have no idea what happened there, but was that again like obvious? Okay, now I have sales. Fuck it, let's just do boards as well.
Yeah, because you know we were doing sales, we started doing kites, kite boards, and then it was like, I mean, we were doing all our own boards anyway, right? The Mistral Naish boards. My dad and I had been doing all the development for the Mistral board since 1979, basically. So it just became kind of a natural thing that we should just take these in as well. And then brought boards into it whenever that was. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
Sometime after 2000, 2002, something like that.
Yeah.
So
knowing what you know now, you'd still start Naish sales.
Yeah, because I don't know where I'd be right now had I not done that and what I'd be doing. I mean, there have been some headaches and bumps in the road, but I've learned a lot. It's been mostly fun. I still own it. I've never made mistakes big enough to tank and lose everything. It's still fun, you know, for the most part. Sometimes I think we make too much stuff. You know, it's hard to juggle the amount of product and sports that we're in sometimes, but it's also super fun because I still want to do all those sports and ride all that stuff. So it's selfish and self-serving in a certain way because most of it I ride myself. So, but yeah, I'd do it again. I might not do it exactly the same, you know, but I'd probably still do it.
Yeah. I mean, you could be sitting, you know, renting out a couple places in Hawaii and whatever, and just windsurfing, right? But again, I think we're coming back to goals and motivation and all that. And I don't know, I guess that doesn't, from the how this conversation is going, I guess that's not your thing really, to just
Get fat under a tree.
yeah. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I love what I do. I mean, it's keeping me, if not young, it's keeping me young at heart and healthy at least. So
then you have to sort of at some point transition into some sort of managerial role, I would say. And with that, you know, your brand gets bigger and you start sponsoring riders. So let's talk a little bit about riders. A lot of people in this industry, I feel like, are ex-competitors or somehow involved. You know, if you look at probably 90% of the brand managers of the, you know, of the companies that are out there, were somewhat competitive people. And I get this feeling like a lot of those people, when they hire a rider or when they look through their own, as you do in life, right? You look through your own experience and you sort of compare maybe to yourself a little bit. How was that for you? Because I mean, there's not going to be another Robby Naish, you know,
it was, for me, I was never the one that would sit across the table and, for example, talk about contracts or money. Because I always wanted to be a rider first, and the business has always been secondary. And even to this day, I don't sit in on contract discussions. That's not the relationship I want to have. I'm a pro rider in my eyes still, as they are, and that's the way I want to be viewed. Obviously, there's, you know, it's a little different because I'm freaking 50 whatever now, but in their eyes, they see an old guy. In my eyes, I'm still a rider, and I want to go ride with them and have fun. And I've always put that responsibility, even if I'm, you know, partial or involved with making the decisions, I'm not sitting across the table looking a guy in the eye talking about his contract. It's just not what I want to do in life. And so it's been pretty good for me because I don't have to put my, you know, I'm not comparing to myself. I have a certain, you know, perspective of what a guy should do. We're a certain size, you know, like in windsurfing, we've never been a big company. We've always been really small. We've had lots of really good riders over the years that we get them up to a certain level, and then they go off to a bigger company that can pay them more, and then they win a world title, and that's fine. You know, we've never been in a position to try to be the biggest. You know, we are what we are. And my relationship with riders, whether they're on Naish or used to be on Naish, sponsored by someone else, I look at them as like brothers in arms. They're fellow riders. I don't look at them that he's sponsored by Duotone or he's sponsored by Ezzy or he's Gastra. Fuck. I look at them that, fuck yeah, there's a guy, one of my friends, making a living or at least getting paid to do what he loves to do. There's never any looking at it negatively or from the sponsorship standpoint. Like you can talk to any one of the guys that used to ride for Naish that went on to ride for other people. There's never any bad blood unless they're an asshole or do something really stupid, which has only happened maybe twice in all of these years of doing it. Otherwise, I'm still really good friends with them. I wish them well. You know, like Jesse Richmond, You know, someone comes and offers him way more money. I'm like, dude, fuck yeah, take it. Awesome. I wish I could pay you that much, but I can't. Go for it. I'm stoked for you. You know, I want pro riders to do as best they can. I'd love for everyone to be able to make $1 million a year windsurfing. They don't have to be sponsored by Naish. So I think the fact that I come from, number one, being a rider at heart and not a businessman gives me a different perspective, a little less maybe cutthroat than others, and maybe why we've never been that big, because the business side has never been the priority.
Yeah, but to some extent you are the face of that whole operation, right?
Sure,
So
yeah,
whenever some shitty situation, some shit hits the fan or whatever, like the very like the latest one with Naish's corporate America and whatever, you know, everybody
that
thinks
was
of
one of the ones I was just talking about.
Yeah, it's kind of you. Nobody thinks of, you have probably 20 people or whatever working for you. Nobody thinks about.
That was an odd one. You know, you always try to be empathetic, you know, and everybody's different. Everybody looks at things differently, and yeah, it's going to reflect on me, and it is what it is. But once in a while, you get somebody where you try to see things from their perspective, but then you realize they have their head so far up their ass that you could never get your head up your ass that far to see from their perspective. So you just got to go, fuck it. And that was one of those cases where there was just no rationality about it.
That's amazing.
Normally, I'm very, very empathetic, and I can see where people are coming from. And yes, I'm wrong a lot of the time. I don't know everything. There's no question. And sometimes, you know, what we need and what someone else needs are different. And I go, yeah, I get it. You know, it is what it is. Doesn't happen very often, though, where it's that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, well, to anybody that hasn't seen, we're talking about an ex-rider that just lashed out on.
It was also undeserving, you know, which is why we were so adamantly defended, you know, by so many people that were familiar with it, that know that we're not like that. So,
and there was a big discussion about custom boards and, you know, like not using actually the Naish product and whatever. And it's funny because another beach legend number 68 is like Cauli and Brausinho left the boards side, at least, because Robby wouldn't let them use custom boards, you know. So
right.
There you go, another legend there for you. True or false?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been a dilemma in the industry, especially like in the early days. Nobody wrote production anything. You couldn't write a production board. There was no way. They weren't good enough. That changed, you know, with the onset that the production boards today are 90% custom anyway. For even the bigger brands that are molding them, yeah, some less so. But like our wave boards, every single one is custom. I don't have any molds for the wave boards. They're all CNC, so they're made just like any guy with an Aku machine or whatever would be making custom at home. So, you know, the times have changed and evolved with the technologies. And for us, especially because we do so few boards, everything we do is custom. You know, even the stuff coming from our factories, it's not molded for, at least for wave riding. So it's different. Back then, yeah, you know, we needed our guys to ride production boards because that's what we were selling. And, you know, we wanted a believable endorsement. And in that time period, I probably stuck too much to my guns. It was also a cost thing. You know, we were still pretty small, and the cost of doing tons and tons of custom boards and whatnot just didn't fit the way we were trying to promote the brand. But it changes and evolves over time. every year is different than the last year.
Yeah. And it's amazing because Cauli and Brasinho turned into like the two biggest gear board freaks there probably was in the last, last years. So that's that.
Yeah, well, Francisco is on the team too, right? So, I mean, we've had a lot of really good riders with the brand. And again, there's almost never hard feelings. Like when I see Cauli, when I see Brasinho, when I see Francisco, I don't ever look at them with a negative light that, oh, I wish you were still with Naish. It's like, fuck yeah, how you doing? God, you're killing it. That was awesome. It's in my eyes, 100%, not even 99%, but 100% stoke.
Yeah.
I never have a bad feeling that, oh, I wish they were still with us.
Yeah, and you got pretty, like, the brand from a competitive type image or rider type image, you got pretty big, like in the mid 2000s. You even had a race team, race gear, really good race sales actually with Dan Kassler, and like really competitive PWA stuff, and wave team, and just looked quite big. And then all of a sudden it felt like somebody decided, okay, we're not a competitive brand anymore. Now we're like the fun, like now we're gonna do gear for the average Joe just to make him have fun.
Right.
Was that a conscious thing, or that just kind of happened over time? Or
it kind of happened over time when the sport, the industry, however you want to put it, kind of started consolidating a lot, right? The windsurfing industry used to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of units per year, and now it's less than 100,000 units a year. It's and getting smaller, pretty much all the time. And unfortunately for us, I wish, and again, a lot of it's probably management. And if I sat behind a desk all day and stopped doing all this fun stuff, or I had different management in place, maybe it would be different. But at the end of the day, a lot of decisions have to be drawn by economics. And if you sell 100 race sales in a year at a shit margin, it's kind of hard to have a race team. It's hard to even justify developing the sales. If you sell 4 slalom boards in a year, it's kind of hard to have, even one team rider who alone is going to have 12 slalom boards or whatever. So some of the decisions are made for you purely by economics, where once the expenses start to supersede the income in a category, as much as you'd like to support it, you just can't. And that, for example, PWA racing for us was just, we had to stop doing it because we weren't winning. No one was buying our race stuff. And the investment required to get to that level based on how Naish is structured, we were never going to get there anyway. Being based in Hawaii, selling to distributors who then sell to dealers, who then sell to end consumers, we're at such a disadvantage to a European-based brand who's selling straight to the dealers and can feed opinion leader product straight into the market, whether it's RRD or Duotone, Fanatic, whoever it is. There's one layer of distribution added with Naish, which makes it kind of economically unviable. So that may change in the future, but
yeah. Did you feel like the industry kind of turned, like it used to be all Hawaii, everything used to be Maui, fins, boards, everything developed in Maui and whatever. And like 20 years or 15 years go by and you're like one of the only ones left in Maui, like you say, everybody's in Europe. And it's, do you feel like that was part of the whole thing? You feel maybe, like it just, you feel left out in some ways?
No, not really. I mean, that's part of the reality of the business, but that's just the business. And again, the business has never been the priority. We would be structured differently if the business was the full priority. It doesn't mean it won't be in the future. Maybe we're going to change and adapt with the times. The internet has changed everything. right? It's changed the way people get their information. It's changed the way people get their entertainment. It's changed the way people purchase things. And, we need to evolve with that to a certain degree as well, from a business standpoint, which we are. We're not the fastest guys to adapt to new technologies and times because we're too busy riding because we live in Maui and it's too good to ride here. If we lived in, I don't know, Muln or Munich or something, we'd probably be focusing on the business way better than we are sitting here on Maui. But I think we have a pretty good balance this way. We're still stoked with what we're doing, and we're heading in the right direction, not the wrong direction. From a business standpoint, from a dollars and cents standpoint.
Yeah, it does seem like it's night and day. Either you're in, some brands are in Maui and the others are in fucking Bavaria or whatever. Like, there's no in between. Come on, guys. Like,
or Thailand, right at the production. Or,
yeah, insane. Yeah, but you did lately get a little push back into kind of that PWA professional scene. You got 2 new riders. Not the best time probably to hire a PWA rider, but it is what it is. Was that in any ways, like, I don't know, did you get a new brand manager for windsurfing, or was that you like getting stoked on the Aloha Classic, or was it, what led, or is it just pure economics? You see windsurfing kind of hit the bottom and bounce back like by 0.5%.
It's certainly not economics, but I just think that the brand needs to be stronger in windsurfing than it is. And that is going to require some investment just from a pride standpoint, not Neil pride, but pride. Windsurfing's in my heart. It's where I come from. I don't want to give people the impression that like I'm abandoning it just because it's not a great business model. So we're kind of reinvesting in it just because I want to. I have a new brand manager who doesn't, Scott Trudon, windsurfed in the 80s. Really good guy here from Maui, comes from kind of a different background. He was the main guy at Dakine here for years. And I just wanted somebody in that isn't me, isn't Mickey Schweiger, doesn't, have any history, fresh blood, come in, balance out the team for all sports, and let's give it some push. And so we're doing that in kiting quite strongly. We have a really solid, young, motivated team in kiting, tons of fresh blood. Windsurfing, I'd like to do the same thing. I want to see, like, I don't want to be bigger than Duotone, Fanatic, but I want to be bigger than we are right now, and I want to support riders. I don't want people to think, oh yeah, you've abandoned your sport. Even if it's bringing in money that we're earning in other sports, windsurfing needs to be given a little bit more love. And so bringing in Ricardo, he's been asking me for years, and it just wasn't, it didn't make sense. And in the end, I'm like, fuck it, I don't care if it makes sense. Let's do it anyway. And it's been so cool having him on the team. The motivation, seeing him, like he's riding better than ever. His attitude is insane. Like, he was a loose cannon there a few years in the past. Like when you'd see him and Martin Brandner fighting, the head guy from JP, it was like, holy shit. He's grown up, he's matured, he knows what he wants. He's riding really well. He's loving the gear. We're really letting him be involved with the development board, sales, whatever. I can ride anything. I can adapt. I mean, you see me riding quads now. I'd rather be on a single fin, but I can ride anything. People always say, oh, the Naish gear is weird because Robby's making gear that he likes. It's like, nah, I will ride anything. You could put me on a McDonald's tray, glued to a piece of wood with a little sheet. I will go make that fun. So I'm letting the team guys really kind of take control of the direction they want to go and try and, let them take the sport to the next level. It has been a weird season to start to resurrect it, with obviously everybody being tied down, but it's different. And sometimes different is good, in ways that you didn't expect. Having Ricardo here for all this time was really good for him, to focus on his riding and his gear. It was great for us to have him around. and I see that continuing. I'm feeling the stoke. We're feeling the energy. If you look at our new product line, we have stuff coming out like for S25 that's really different. Like, got some foiling sails and stuff. It's super fun. We're not going to win the PWA racing foil discipline, but I think that's probably going to kind of disappear with the Olympic foiling class taking over now anyway. I think that's the future of windsurf racing here for the next couple of years is the Olympic class. But in waves and freestyle, and the sport is definitely going back up. It's too cool not to. There's too much energy. The level is so insane, and I want to be part of it. Maybe not personally, but emotionally connected with the brand, supporting other guys. I want to be there with windsurfing into the future.
It's great to hear you kind of still, follow a little bit and whatever, because I don't know, does that hurt you when you hear, like you mentioned, like people were like, fucking Robby turned his back on the sport that brought him everything, and whatever. Does that get like, because you could be, I mean, Pete Cabrina is a windsurfer, doesn't make windsurf gear. Like Craig from Fanatic told me that, like, fucking Robby doesn't need to do this, he could close his windsurf division, doesn't need to make any gear actually, like.
Yeah. Economically, we should have closed the windsurfing division years ago, but we're not doing it for the economics of it. I mean, again, that was never the reason I started the business in the first place.
So it is a little personal when you hear that shit.
Well, not from a business standpoint, because I've never abandoned it personally. Like if I stopped windsurfing, that would be different. Like if I stopped windsurfing, the business at the end of the day, you have to make money because it's not just Robby Naish that I'm looking out for. I've got all my employees and their families and their health insurance and their mortgage. And that's when you have to start looking at things from a different perspective of, does this make sense? Okay, it doesn't make sense, but how much does it not make sense? Right? If it was only me, I could do whatever I want, but I'm responsible to a certain degree, or the decisions that we make. I'm responsible for a whole lot of people's livelihoods and families that they depend on. So, it can't just be emotional fun and games. We need to be smart at the same time. And right now, I think we can do both because we're doing well financially, even through COVID. I think we positioned ourselves in a really good way, timing wise, product wise, that we've actually done amazingly well through COVID, where other brands were like nearly ready to shut the doors. We paid all our riders in all sports 100% through the whole thing. We never cut anybody back. I never laid off any employees. It was like we just ran through it, crossing our fingers. And in the end of the day, we were lucky because people were home buying this kind of stuff. And I think the Naish brand is being more appreciated in the landscape of choices now than maybe it was in certain categories before. A lot of the brands, especially in some of the other sports that we're involved with, have come and gone. People that get into a sport when it's big and trendy and new, they get into it in the beginning, and then they disappear. And we've always been in for the long haul, and I think people are starting to appreciate that in things like stand-up, for example, where we're doing quite well again.
Yeah, so. And everybody in stand-up is the best example of the sport that has just boomed and then just tailed off massively, I would guess. But part of why you're doing so well has to be winging, right? And recognizing that trend, having it starting in Maui, and I think
well, we could be doing better. We didn't set ourselves up for the boom that we launched it for a lot of other people. When we started, I kept telling my guys, you watch how many brands are going to be in this in a year. You can have every windsurf brand, every kite brand, every foil brand, and then a whole bunch of other generic brands as well. And already there's like 50 brands and probably another 50 coming. So it's getting pretty flooded. But we did get in the beginning of something, you know.
Yeah, because the technology
cool.
is just a kite tube, right? With a little bit of windsurfing know-how, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, like some of the wings are better than others, obviously.
Oh,
But
absolutely. Yeah, there's a massive difference. But yeah, we're definitely excited about what's happening in winging, and it's going to be huge. It's insane. If you look here at the demographic doing it on Maui already, you know, a year ago I was the only guy out there. Like in Kahului Harbor, that was my testing spot where I could go secret and test new foils and stuff, and nobody would see. Now there's like 50 guys in the harbor with this chain of beginners learning. Kanaha, you know, there's 20 kiters out and 10 windsurfers and 30 wings. And the interesting thing is the demographic of those. It's kids. There's 8-year-old and 10-year-old and my daughter, 13-year-old, and her friends. Lots of kids winging, as well as the old guys. So it's the broadest demographic that I've seen. You know, even more than kiting, more than stand up in the beginning.
is it so? So you reckon it's here to stay? Like, it's not just another flick? You know, like.
Yeah, given the popularity and again, given the broad range of appeal, I think this one is really interesting. I mean, here, again, we've been doing it longer on Maui than most places. But if you come to the North Shore of Maui now, you'd think winging's been around for 20 years. They are everywhere. And it's, again, I couldn't get a 10-year-old kid interested in windsurfing or kiting without bribing them a new iPhone or something. You know, obviously there's some, but there's not enough, right?
Yeah.
And every little kid wants to wing. There's an appeal there that I don't understand. That is,
It's so close to windsurfing foiling.
yeah.
It's the
Although,
same.
yeah, it's way easier than windsurf foiling though. Windsurf foiling is really hard even if you're a good windsurfer. And you learn to wing foil in half an hour, even if you've never foiled before and never windsurfed. So it's much, much, much easier, and you get good way faster. And unlike windsurf foiling, which is really fun in light wind and really scary in strong wind, even if you're a good guy, this is easy in all winds. It doesn't matter because the power goes straight through your body into the wing. There's not that disconnect of the sail going into the board. That, you know, the triangulation of power, windsurf foiling, is tricky.
Yeah, you can depower. You can depower the wing, right?
Yeah, and when you get a gust or a lull, it translates right through your body into the foil. There's no delay or disconnect. Where windsurfing, you get in a gust, it kind of pushes the foil down. You get into a hole, the foil wants to come up. And even if you're really good and using really specialized gear, you kind of have to be pretty good to get it. You know, even if you're going to go with a little tiny sail and cruise the way I like to windsurf foil, it's certainly harder than wing foiling. Like my daughter, Christina, she can windsurf, you know, kind of. She's not in the foot straps, not in the harness. You can kind of go and make it back almost to the same spot. On the wing, she's flying everywhere. She wants to jump. She's out there with her friends, jiving. She's jiving in the air. Like I barely even jive in the air. So it's interesting, the appeal and the learning curve and how much fun you can have just mowing the lawn. Like I'm saying right now, yeah, if you have a sport where you got a little wind and you got a lake and you're going to mow the lawn, kiting, windsurfing, or winging, right now, I'd pick winging. It's the best mow the lawn sport at the moment. So
yeah, today I saw a meme saying, I think there was like Kai from his video where he was trying to go as fast as possible on the wing. Right. And it's like, and it said like, okay, so now you put a boom and buttons on your wing, and soon you're gonna discover that if you plug it in your board, you're gonna go even faster.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna reinvent windsurfing. Good on you. Like, do you see that coming? Like
the guys that are putting strings on the wing, and you see them like holding the wing with strings and say, yeah, well, that's kite surfing. You know, we have that too. So
yeah. I don't know. It's really funny seeing this. It's really, really funny. I guess as a windsurfer, you just don't have the perspective to.
Yeah, I mean, still for me, nothing beats. If you want to go really fast, windsurfing's the best vehicle in the universe. Like, I'm going fast on the wing, like if it's windy, but I'm not going as fast as I go on my
Not even
slalom
close. And it's a little
or-
awkward on the wing, right? While in
Yeah.
windsurfing, you just put the hammer
So-
down and it just, yeah.
Yeah, you can scare yourself, but it's totally safe. Going really fast on the wing is scary. You know, it's not as scary as going fast on a windsurf hydrofoil. That's super scary because the crashes are so gnarly. But a slalom board is still the best way to go fast. A wave board is still the best way to ride waves by far. And if you want to jump super high in flat water, kiting is still, you know, I'm jumping pretty high on the wing, but I can jump 4 times higher on a kite. If you really want to just get huge air, kite surfing is still the way to go. So there's a time and a place for everything. And to me, whatever gets people on the water is a good thing. This is just getting a lot of people on the water that, you know, maybe they'll come to kiting and windsurfing from there, but this is a starting point for a lot of people that, wouldn't kite or windsurf otherwise. Like a lot of surfers, a lot of foiler guys that have never had any interest in wind sports, they're all winging here.
It's freaking windy, isn't it? And it's pretty flat for the summer.
It's been so windy. It's been too windy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane, that whole winging thing. Okay, so now that we established you're doing pretty well, I need to plug in a question from our producers. I promised. I'm sorry. The question is, when are you going to start supporting Windsurfing TV? That's the question.
I didn't even know about Windsurfing TV until the email about your podcast, and I listened briefly to the Josh Angulo segment, so I knew what it was I was talking about. So
yeah,
maybe soon, since now I know what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Ticked off the plug. What's where do you see, like, you've been good at taking the trend, milking it, and kind of, you know, and there's a new trend. Naish is always making gear for it and whatever. We just touched on it, but where do you see like the future of water sports in general? You know, like, is foiling the thing? It kind of brings everything together. Like, I can talk to a kite foiler now. I would never talk to a twin tip guy, you know what I mean? Like, but I don't know, like, what do you think? It's actually an exciting time. I think finally there's something new. After first time in my lifetime, there's something really new, you know? So
Yeah, I've always been a really bad sort of visionary for what's coming in the future until it's there and we're playing with it. Usually right about when you start getting bored, something new comes along that you didn't expect. But for sure, in the sailing world, it's all about foiling at the moment without question, which is crazy because it's not new, right? It's been around forever. It's just the time is right, the technology is right, the market in various capacities was there. I think America's Cup really helped draw some focus onto foils. And now if you look at what's happening in sailboat, you know, sail foiling, it's insane. Windsurfing, obviously, it's the Olympic future. It's super cool. Kite foil racing, if you look at what those guys are doing, it's freaking insane. It's like so high performance.
the windsurfing somehow doesn't go any faster on a foil though. Like sailboats do, kites do, but
you actually go slower except in really light wind. I mean, in light wind up to say 15 knots, you're faster on the foil. Beyond that, once you get into 18, 20 knots, you're definitely faster not on the foil, at least the current way that windsurf foils are being used. I'm still not convinced windsurfing that the type of foil that we're using is really optimizing what's there. Trying to balance and teeter-totter on that little airplane. It works for winging. It works really well for kiting. I think we could come up with something better for windsurfing.
more America's Cup style.
Yeah, just triangulating the lift off of one point, whether it's, T-foils, just something different where you get less wetted surface spread further apart, and someone will come up with it, and then it'll be super cool. It works now, but it's not optimized, I think, the way it could be, because you're right. The America's Cup boats are going nearly 40 knots and 12 knots of wind. There's a lot more potential there than what we're capitalizing on. And someone will do it. It won't be me, but hopefully someone will do it, and then I can check out what they're doing and play with it and make some of my own. But yeah, it's exciting times. There's a lot of fun development. There's a lot of ways to get out on the water and have fun. You don't need to be super, super good to do it, which is bringing a lot of like old windsurfers back to windsurfing, right? If you have 12 knots on a lake and you used to windsurf 20 years ago, getting on a foil now, you get that thrill. It's accessible, it's achievable. You're not going to, take 6 months to learn it. You're going to get out there in one day and start having fun. And the cool thing is foiling brings fun back to average conditions that people have at home. You don't have to go to Torbole. You don't have to fly to the Canary Islands. You don't have to go to Tarifa to have fun windsurfing, and that will help the sport. Being able to go out on your local lake and go blasting around regardless of what the wind is doing is going to help.
Yeah, we did that Olympic promotional event in Lake of St. Moritz. You would never even look at that lake. You would be like, windsurfing here? No way.
Silva Plana?
No.
Yeah.
The other, before the proper event in Silva Plana, there is a lake in St. Moritz that we put on a show with
foils.
Just 10 guys, 10 guys, and
Nice.
and it was and I think this is what the windsurfer was, right? You could just
go anywhere.
Yeah. Maybe we're into still in my lifetime. Maybe it'll happen. Who knows?
Yeah, let's hope so. You're pretty young. So.
Where do you see yourself in the future of all that? I mean, you're still 20 years from now, you're in Hokipa with your pink sail, throwing a backside turn with your top lower than your board, or?
I hope so. Motivation wise, I see doing this until my body doesn't let me anymore. That's the thing. Slowly I'm wearing myself out, but I'm eating good, and just my joints are getting kind of sore,
Yeah. But you came back pretty strong from that nasty injury
from the
you
pelvis.
had.
Yeah, that still bothers me a little bit. There's 4 screws in the front that get a little sore if I do certain things. But, it's more just elbows and shoulders and my lower back. But frick, I'm still probably in better shape than most 20-year-olds. So I don't see it holding me back much, Hopefully I'm still doing push loops in 15 years at Hokipa.
Yeah.
So.
You're not one of the kiters that say that winging kills your arms.
No, winging is frick. I can wing all day. There's so little power in it. Jumping takes a bit of force, but no, you can wing all day.
But the first time I went, a kiter stopped me and he's like, "Hey, how are you winging for so long? It just destroyed my arms in 15 minutes." I'm like, "Oh my God."
You guys spending too much time in his harness.
Yeah. Exactly.
But it's the same. I can windsurf foil for ages with no harness. But I mean, I'm not going with a 7, 8, right? If you use a big sail, you got to have a harness. But I love doing stuff that is just totally free, no harness, and go blasting around. So
you did compete without a harness, so maybe that's where it comes from.
Yeah, we didn't have harnesses. Were illegal all the way until the marathon in 78, 79. Harnesses became legal. So
3 years. 3 years competitive life without a harness.
Yeah, and you'd go out for back-to-back triangle races with no harness. Yeah. Still got some power in the arms.
Yeah. Okay. Been talking for ages, but we still have a little segment. We ask all the guys same questions. So hopefully, let's see how you do.
Okay.
What are your pet peeves?
Cigarette smoking, people that talk too much.
That's us right now.
Well, not like that. People that just talk to hear themselves talk. Not thinking before you talk. Bad drivers. Cell phones. I'm getting more and more as I get older. So, but that's good.
Everybody, I think, grumpy grumpiness comes with age, I guess.
Old and grumpy. Yeah, I'm trying not to be old and grumpy. I'm a grandfather twice already, so I'm trying to be a fun, happy grandfather.
Congratulations on that. How many times a day do you pee your wetsuit is the original question, but I guess pee your board shorts is the...
I'm in the lucky position where I don't even have to go places to wear a wetsuit very often, but usually never unless I'm like in the water and I can do the instant flush. But I'm not just going to pee in it, like Phil McGain, just like standing there in the tent. Not going to happen.
Guilty pleasure.
Yeah. Yuck.
No. What is your guilty pleasure? That's the next question, not being your...
Oh, I thought you meant that was Phil McGain's guilty pleasure. No. Guilty pleasure. Combustion engine cars.
Sick. 3 apps you can't live without.
Apps?
Yeah. As you said, you hate cell phones, so that might be not the best suited.
None. I could live without any app all day long. Wouldn't miss it at all.
Top 3 waves.
That's super old school.
Top 3 waves ridden. I mean, like spots, waves.
Spots?
Yeah.
I mean, I have to include Hokipa just because it's so good so often. So I'd include Hokipa, Cloudbreak, Fiji, and the next one be a tough call. Backyards, Jaws, Happy Tea in Tahiti. I guess I'd say Jaws before it got crowded. Backyards if I had to include all times because it's never crowded.
Your top 5 windsurfers of all time.
Of all time?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's tough because my all time goes a long way back. Gee. You know, that'd be a hard one because if you make a list of 5, you're really leaving out some guys that deserve to be on that list. And so I'm just going to name a few that had, profound effect on the sport. But it's a really short list because otherwise you got to include more people. This sport has had a lot of really, really, really good personalities, competitors, opinion leaders, influencers. But you'd have to say for sure Bjorn Dunkerbeck. You'd have to say Jason Polikow. You'd have to say Antoine Albo.
Throw yourself in there. You got 4.
I would hope I would be in the list somewhere. And after that, there's a good 10 to 15 guys that deserve to be on the list as well that I could, throw out. But I'd really want to think about it because if you leave one of them off, that'd be super lame. Like I said, there's a lot of guys that deserve credit, but those guys, Antoine, because he's continued to stay current for such a long time in multi-disciplines and stay passionate and stay completely committed to the sport, exemplary. Windsurfing is weird that it's had guys that have stayed, amongst the top for a really long time. That's not historically in most sports the case. Bjorn for a long time. I did for a long time. But then in terms of who influenced things, profoundly, of course, I had some influence. Bjorn had massive influence through his reign. Jason really influenced wave sailing through that time. A lot of people thereafter reinforcing and taking things to a whole new level. But there's a group of them. It's if you name one, you got to name a whole bunch.
Yeah, most underrated windsurfer of all time.
Most underrated windsurfer of all time, I probably don't even know. Because if he's underrated to that level, then he's probably not even on my radar and deserves to be. My realm of keeping tabs on where the sport has waned, juggling as much as I juggle. I'm not on the windsurf forums. I'm not staying current to who's the hot kid in Pozo. I probably should be if windsurfing were my total focus. There's just not enough hours in the day to juggle everything. So most underrated currently, I have no idea. Most underrated historically, I don't know. Historically, nobody was underrated because there were guys that were like making money that weren't even very good. So it's a lot harder for guys now. You got really, really talented guys that have no sponsors at all, where, man, if you could jibe around a few buoys back in the old day, you were already like sponsored and on tour. So I think the most underrated guy is probably somebody right now that deserves a lot more than he's able to get.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure there's a lot of them out there. So I just say good luck, make it happen.
I'm not sure if you even know what that is, but foil freestyle, yes or no, as a discipline,
Everything is possible. I mean, when you see the stuff guys are doing, it's insane. I don't think it's necessary, but there are guys that are going to go out there all day and do insane stuff. We'll see if there's enough guys at some point to get to a level where they can do something other than YouTube videos with it. It'd be cool. But right now, I don't think it's there. Like, they want to do kite foil freestyle on the GKA tour. I think just because something can be done doesn't necessarily mean it should be done in a competitive format. They're already thinking the same thing with wing. There's already 2 wing foil associations that are like, let's do this and this, or here's the rules for this discipline. It's like, it doesn't even exist yet. And they already want to like go have pro events. I think things should be given breathing room and time to evolve and percolate. But for sure, guys, if you see what guys are doing, even in the waves on windsurf foils and in dead flat water, absolutely.
Yeah,
but there's only a few guys.
Yeah, you say that, but when you were that guy, you were dying for these events and for that tour to happen, right?
That's what I'm saying. As soon as there's enough guys to actually have it. You don't want it to be like freestyle in the early days where it was embarrassing to see it because there were only a few guys that could do the tricks. As soon as there's enough guys that you can actually go and perform at a reasonable level, absolutely.
Yeah.
And in
somehow
the meantime,
every sport needs that top of the pyramid thing. I don't know, kiting, I think got screwed badly because it didn't have that for a while. You didn't know who's the best kiter, who's.
Well, it's because there were 3-4 world champions in 4 different tours running around. Yeah, it was not good. I agree.
And to a certain extent, windsurfing is specialized like that as well.
True.
But now, if you think to have an overall champion now, like you guys did back in the day, it's pretty hard to imagine, isn't it?
Nobody does all the disciplines. Yeah, it's very specialized. But yeah, I mean, sure, it's going to happen. It's a way to get out and be windsurfing and doing freestyle in less wind, which is critical. You know,
Yeah.
whatever we can do in less wind and more accessible conditions, competition wise, is going to be good for the sport.
Yeah.
You know, as long as the level is such that you can watch it and not have everybody leave.
Yeah.
Like some of the early freestyle, it was painful to watch. You know, it was better not to do it. But
Yeah.
now it's obviously totally different.
Yeah.
you know.
Obstacles in slalom. Yes or
Right.
no? Like just shove a sausage, don't put this whole Super X thing, but just shove a sausage.
Yeah. It depends on the wind limits, if they're smart and reasonable about it, if guys are out on 80 centimeter wide boards and friggin' 80 centimeter fins in 10 knots trying to jump over a sausage and half of them are catching their fin on the thing and falling because they're underpowered, that does more harm than good. But for sure, anything you can do to make it more exciting and to make skill other than just boat speed a bigger part of it is cool. Like beach starts. Beach starts were so awesome. When slalom had to be set in the waves, if there were waves, that was awesome. Compared to watching guys out in the middle of the ocean go back and forth between 2 or 3 buoys, 1 kilometer out to sea, in terms of growth of the sport, it's not as fast and technical, but it's a lot more fun to watch
Yeah, and for the people as well, like a guy can come interview you straight before the start, whatever, and you're there on the beach, you can high five the people, whatever. Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it makes it better, and it makes it so the biggest, heaviest guy is not always going to win if you mix it up so it's not, half a kilometer between each buoy where you're just standing on, going straight, make a jibe, stand on, go straight, but there's some board skill and some maneuvers and stuff involved. I think it would be awesome. I loved that type of racing compared to boat speed, pure technical racing.
Yeah. One spot you'd have to sail every single day for the rest of your life.
Nowhere. I'd get bored. I like to mix it up.
Worst excess baggage bill or check-in story?
Fuck, I have so many. We used to travel with 2 course boards, 2 mast bags, 1-piece masts, 2 boom bags, 2 slalom board bags, 2 wakeboard bags, no caddy. $1,200 was average, like back in the 80s when that was really a lot. My excess baggage was usually more than double my ticket. It's probably the case now. It's a lot harder to fly now. Nightmares. I had sail bags going to Canary Islands, never show up. I had a triple slalom bag arrive in Paros, Greece, opened it up, and they had run over all of the boards, obviously upside down, and broken them all in half, brand new, never even ridden. Luckily, we had no winds, not one race got held, so it didn't really matter. But yeah, I've had a lot of travel baggage stories.
Yeah. Who was your worst competitor?
Worst competitor?
Yeah, like guy in your heat, and you're like, fuck, not this guy, not again.
Well, it had to be Bjorn there for a while, like 87, 88, 89, when, we were still battling, and that was right on the transition from raked fins to vertical fins, where I was a little slow catching on, and God, he was so fast. It was before he turned into a giant. He was just tall, but he was already fast. Otherwise, in waves, never really had anybody like that. Yeah, probably only Bjorn in the heyday.
You get 1 million cash and you need to spend it within 24 hours. What do you buy?
Can I put it into stock?
I guess,
Or
yeah.
do I have to buy
It's a pretty
physical?
boring. It's a pretty like reasonable, boring answer,
Yeah, but
V12, come on, at least, something.
no, right now, because of taxes and everything, I would probably give $500,000 to charity, and I'd buy a new engine for my Volkswagen bus. I'd probably put a new engine in my Studebaker. And then I'd buy a bunch of mature trees, and I'd buy one of those lawns that you can roll out done for the house I'm building right now, because right now all I have is dirt, not one bush, not one tree, not one grass. So I'd give $500,000 to charity. I'd buy a couple of engines, and then I'd put the rest into trees and bushes and fruit trees and grass. So
Hell of a garden.
yeah,
200 grand in trees.
yeah. Well, you could spend it these days, I swear.
Yeah. Okay, if you have a long drive and you listen to a windsurf podcast, who would be on that podcast?
I've never actually listened to any podcast ever. Everyone tells me I should. So I guess I would say, who would be?
Well, your longest drive is about 15 minutes. So
Yeah, 15 minutes. Have to be a short podcast. So someone really entertaining. Hoyle Schweitzer.
the inventor, the grandfather.
Yeah. I haven't talked to him in a long time. He's still around. He's around 80, early 80s. That'd be interesting.
Shit, that's a good idea.
Yeah, you should see if you could do that, because he was a really neat guy. He absolutely was the father of the sport, regardless of the whole who invented it thing. He's what made it happen, him and his family. And we owe him a lot. And he's not going to be around a whole lot longer, because he's not the youngest guy in the world. My dad would be a pretty interesting podcast. He's so freaking smart. So old guys. And then, I don't know, some really young, passionate windsurfer that has been raised in this universe of internet. Some, there's a kid here named Koa, the son of Anna. What was her last name before, when she was a sponsored windsurfer? Anna.
The Dutch girl, Anne-Marie.
No, not Anne-Marie. French. She was the girlfriend of what the heck's her last name? Anyway, a really young little kid windsurfer would be classic, just to see their perspective on stuff, having none of the history in their mind that we have. Just windsurfing today, pure and unadulterated, that comes from the internet and whatever they've seen would be classic. And see what words they use too. What an 8 or 10 or 12-year-old uses to describe things would be pretty classic too. So total opposites, like the beginning of the sport and then the latest, newest. Like Bjorn Dunkerbeck's kid, but younger.
Yeah.
One of those kids at Pozo that just wakes up every morning and goes, "There's wind in the trees," like I used to do. You'd wake up and go, "What's the wind doing? What's the wind doing?" It's all you can think about.
Yeah. And that feeling never really goes away. I mean, I don't know. I look at you and I'm like stoked. I'm like, shit, that's what I'm going to feel like in 30 years? Sick.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't go away. You're still looking to see what the wind is doing. And the problem is now you get the internet and you just go and look and see what the wind is doing. The mystery is gone. It was cool when it was real mystery. You didn't know if there were waves. Your wind gauge was looking up at the trees and going, I think it's windy. And there was no way to tell. You had to drive to the beach to check it out. There was no surf report. There was no wind report. There was no cam. And that romance is kind of gone with everything right at your fingertips. Like, I know what it's like in Fiji right now if I want to know. Is there a swell coming? Is Pozo going to be windy in 2 days? I could fly there and catch it. That changes things.
Not too bad, though. You wouldn't want to drop like 5K on a trip to Fiji and have it flat.
But it was cool when that's what you had to do. You know, I had many trips like that, to Fiji, to Indonesia, where, you know, to Tahiti, where you don't know what you're going to get. And that kind of was cool. You know, sometimes having all the information is not necessarily to your benefit.
Mm,
You know,
Yeah.
just it changes things.
definitely. Robby, thank you so much for your time. I
Yeah,
mean, we could
thank you.
probably do another one of these right off the bat because we barely scraped the surface, but yeah, I won't hold you any longer.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I know it's getting late for you.
No,
Yeah,
it's all
11
right.
o'clock.
It's all right. You're you're probably about to go do something. It's about the time that the beach is open, winds.
11 o'clock.
Yeah.
We're free to go. So
Yeah. Sick. Yeah, appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And what else can I say? Just thank you for everything
Yeah,
you've done for the sport and for this little brick in the wall as well. Thank you.
yeah, thank you. I appreciate you reaching out. Stoked to be part of it. And I wish you well. I'll see you here whenever they allow us to start
will.
moving around again. So
You will.
see you on the water somewhere.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Take it easy.
Thanks,
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Okay. See ya.
Yes, there you go. Robby Naish still on the water every day at 57 and going strong and going strong. And maybe he's going to support Windsurfing TV. If you think he should, smash us a like down below. Share the podcast to everyone else. Let us know what you think as well. Let us know who you want to see on the podcast as usual. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support the channel like Robby Naish might do, you can chip in some beer money. I'll put the link below. And those beers will be well received and put towards making this channel bigger and better in the future. Loads more coming up, so stay tuned. I'll stick other links up above, the like buttons below.